webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. This is the planning board meeting of September 23rd, 2020. Thank you all for being here. First item of business is approval of the minutes of August 26th. And the minutes as they appear in your packet, board members, are corrected. There was a, go ahead. Do you want to comment on that?
No, we need to do roll call first.
We do?
Yes,
Because
we
of a
have
roll
this far
call?
on the, we have her, because she's attending virtually.
Because she's virtual. Okay, please do a roll call. Thank you.
Okay. Art Wood,
Here.
Jeremy Burris,
Here.
Bonnie Carr,
Present.
Doug Driggers,
Here.
Nick Thurston,
Here.
Bruce Wadwell, which is, I believe he contacted and said he would not be in attendance. Jason Jones.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bonnie has such a presence, it seems like she's here when she isn't, right?
Yeah, thank you, Art.
You know, yeah. You're one of my favorites, yeah. The approval of the minutes, there was a small error on the ones that were distributed. There was some information carried over from the prior month. But then it says they appear in your packet with just those deletions. It was just a deletion, it wasn't any changes. Appear to be correct. Did anyone notice anything else that should be adjusted on the minute? Okay, then I'd like a motion to approve the minutes. We have Jeremy with the motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second? Second. Okay, I heard a second from Doug Driggers. Any discussion? Okay, we'll call for a vote on the accepting the minutes.
Art Wood,
Yes.
Jeremy Burris,
Yes.
Bonnie Carr,
Yes.
Doug Driggers,
Yes.
Nick Thurston,
Yes.
Jason Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The minutes pass with a vote of 6-0. Next order of business is public comments. This is a chance for anyone from the public to speak to the planning board on any item that's not on the agenda. Is there anyone here at this time that wishes to speak? Do we have any virtual callers for this agenda item?
We have that statement that we read.
I have to read the
for
statement.
Public comments.
Okay. Electronically submitted public comments are disseminated to the planning board prior to the start of today's meeting for review and inclusion into this meeting's official record. If there is anyone physically in attendance at this meeting that would like to speak on a matter excluding matters which are subject to quasi-judicial hearing scheduled or to be scheduled before the planning board, please come forward. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you. No one on the phone then, either.
No, we don't. They only submit them electronically.
And there weren't any submissions in writing?
Right.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Next item of business is legislative hearings. The first case is ANX 2020-01, annexation Jack Tucker Road, an annexation request. This is a public hearing. I understand that the city is here to present. You may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Marlene Sanchez, planner with the Planning and Zoning Division. The property owners of 3 parcels totaling approximately 28 acres contiguous to the Plant City corporate limits has requested the property to be annexed. Located on the west side of Jack Tucker Road between Jim Johnson and East Parkman Road. The development of a single-family subdivision is the reason for the annexation request. Reviewing agencies had no objections to the proposed annexation. Staff recommends the planning board find the proposed annexation consistent with Chapter 171 Florida statutes for annexing properties and to forward the annexation to the City Commission with the recommendation of approval. Before ending my presentation, I wanted to explain the process of it. Having property annexed into the city is the first of several steps that are required to go with the property owner just to have the land developed once it's annexed. In addition to the actual annexation, the property owner also needs to apply for a comprehensive plan land use amendment, the CPA, and a rezoning so that the property's future land use and zoning specifications can be changed from county designations to city designations for both the comp plan, future land use map, and the zoning map. This case is solely for the annexation of the property. And so will my next one, just the annexations. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions of Ms. Sanchez? No questions? This is a public hearing, and a notice for this meeting, the public was advised to contact the city clerk no later than 3 p.m. on Tuesday, September 22nd, should anyone wish to speak. Madam Clerk, did anyone contact your office to speak at this public hearing?
No other persons have requested to speak, but we do have an applicant representative, I believe, or you may ask if there's an applicant representative here.
Would the applicant's representative like to come forward and speak? Thank you. Please give us your name and address for the record.
Yes, good morning. My name is Sarah Case. I actually have item 4A and 4B in front of you for this property.
Yes.
And when we selected for the annexation, it was prior to us having a survey at the time. So the acreage is actually correct on item 4D, the 28.76,
Oh, okay.
and not 30.48. We submitted for the annexation first and then the land use.
So state for the record the correct acreage.
The correct acreage for the record is 28.76, so it is stated correctly in item B.
Thank you.
But I'll stand for any questions. Again, I'm the Sarah Case, and I'm representing the property owner.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Board have any questions? Thank you. Is there anyone else physically in attendance that would like to speak at this hearing? You'll have 3 minutes. Okay. No further speakers. Is there? That's correct. That'll be a separate agenda item, so you'll have an opportunity at that time. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Are there any further speakers on this? And no one? Okay. What's the pleasure of the board? Does the board wish to discuss this matter? Yeah. No? Any discussion?
No questions from me, no, sir.
Okay. Then what's the pleasure of the board?
I motion to approve the change,
Okay.
the annexing the city limits.
Okay, so we have a motion by Jeremy Burris. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second by Bonnie Carr. Okay. Any discussion of the motion? Okay, no further discussion. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Art Wood,
Yes.
Jeremy Burris,
Yes.
Bonnie Carr,
Yes.
Doug Biggers,
Yes.
Nick Thurston,
Yes.
Jason Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, motion carries 6-0. Thank you. The next case is also an annexation, ANX 2020-02, the annexation of North Wilder Road. This is a public hearing. I understand we have city staff here to present. You may proceed.
Again, I'm Marlene Sanchez, planner with the Planning and Zoning Division. The property owners of 3 parcels totaling approximately 20 acres contiguous to the Plant City corporate limits has requested the property to be annexed. The property is located off East Sam Allen Road between North Park and North Wilder Roads. The development of a hospital is the reason for the annexation request. The parcels are adjacent to approximately 50 acres within the city limits that are also owned by the applicants. Reviewing agencies had no objections to the proposed annexation. Staff recommends the planning board find the proposed annexation consistent with Chapter 171 Florida statutes for annexing properties and forward the annexation to the city commission with the recommendation of approval. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions for Ms. Sanchez? The board? Okay, thank you. This is a public hearing. The notice for this hearing was advised, the public was advised to contact the city clerk on later 3 p.m. on Tuesday, September 22nd, should anyone wish to speak. Madam Clerk, did anyone contact your office to speak at this public hearing?
I believe we have applicants
Okay,
potentially available to speak.
okay. Thank you. Would you please identify yourself, name
Good
and
morning,
address?
Elise Batzel with Stearns Weaver Miller, 401 East Jackson Street, Tampa, Florida.
Thank you.
We are excited to be here on behalf of South Florida Baptist Hospital this morning.
Let me get it up. Just
No problem.
I'll get it up.
I'm joined today by Karen Kerr, who's the president, and Scott Harding, who is the VP of construction, in case you have any questions after our presentation. We do have 2 companion items this morning, both this annexation and a comprehensive plan amendment that will come up directly next. So, as already stated by Marlene, the property is about 20 acres located along the southern edge of Sam Allen Road, 700 feet east of Park Road, generally along the I-4 Park Road interchange. It is going to be a new hospital, a new medical facility. That's interesting. There we go. With a hospital, an emergency room, also a medical office out parcel. This is just sort of a little brief conceptual plan for you. As you can see, the hospital will be located fairly central to the development with plenty of buffer around. Just so you understand how this property is associated with the other property that we own, the parcels in yellow are the 3 parcels to be annexed, but as you can see, the hospital also is under contract to purchase the property further to the west and also a little small piece across Park Road for a total of a little over 50 acres. And this is just a little glimpse of a rendering as a preview. We are here to answer any questions that you have. We'll present a little more additional information with the comprehensive plan amendment. We're available at your request. Thank you.
Well, this matter is the annexation. Does the board have any questions from Ms. Batzel?
No, sir.
Any questions? Thank you. Is there someone on the line that would like to speak?
No, we had no other requests.
You have no other questions?
No, sir.
Is anyone physically in attendance that would like to speak at this hearing on this matter? Okay. There'll be no further speakers. The hearing is closed. Are there any board members that want to discuss this matter? Is there any discussion among the board? No?
I'm excited about this personally. My father's had cows on that property forever, so it's gonna be very interesting to have a cow pasture turn into a hospital. So Karen,
Wow.
my family's excited about this, so pretty interesting.
So are you looking for a little memorial or something?
Maybe I can put a picture of the old barn out there in the hospital somewhere one day. I don't know.
Okay. Well, you got history.
I do. Well, it's been a long time.
So I think he's gonna like the proposal. Is any further discussion? Yeah. Okay, what's the pleasure of the board? Now your motion.
Motion to approve, annex dash 2020-02.
Okay, we have a motion by Nick Thurston. Is there a second?
Second.
I heard a second by Jeremy Burris. Any discussion of the motion? Call for the vote, Madam Clerk.
Art Wood,
Yes.
Jeremy Burris.
Yes.
Bonnie Carr,
Yes.
Doug Driggers,
Yes.
Thurston, Jason Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The motion carries 6-0. The next case is PC/CPA 20-05, Future Land Use Map Amendment. This is a public hearing. I understand that Mark Hudson is here to present this item on behalf of the Planning Commission. Is he here virtually?
He's on the line.
Okay.
Yes, I am. Mark Hudson, Planning Commission staff. Before I begin, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, well, I will begin. The Planning Commission has processed 2 plan amendments, or is in the process of processing 2 plan amendments for the City of Plant City. The first one is PCCPA 2005. If I could have the next slide, please. This shows you the general location. Of course, it's related to the annexation that you just heard a moment ago. But to clarify, the site is east of North Park Road, north of Interstate 4, west of North Wilder Road, and south of East Sam Allen Road. This shows you the location on Plant City's vision map, shown by the star. Also, you can see it's in very close proximity to an identified commercial activity center at the interchange of I-4 and Park Road. If I could have the next slide. This shows you an aerial of the site. The affected lands, which is the same as the annexation you heard previously, is surrounded by the blue lavender line. You can see the area predominantly is undeveloped or in agricultural uses today. However, there are some adjacent single-family homes on large lots, particularly on the north side of East Sam Allen Road. If I could have the next slide. This shows you another aerial of the location, again showing you the site is vacant and some of the surrounding uses. By way of a little bit of background, this has of course been privately initiated. It is a regular scale plan amendment, so we will be looking to for the commission to determine if we wish to transmit this to the Department of Economic Opportunity for their review prior to their final action. It comes in at just over 20 acres. And its current land use is Hillsborough County Residential 1, which allows 1 dwelling unit per acre. And the applicant has requested Plant City Commercial. If I could have the next slide. This shows you the adopted future land use map as it stands today. You can see the adjacent property to the west, which has a commercial designation indicated by the red. The land use of this property and the remaining surrounding areas to the north, east, and south is Hillsborough County Residential 1. You also can see the dark yellow to the northwest, which is residential 6, and that represents the bottom portion of the future development known as North Park Isles. If I could have the next slide. And if the City Commission ultimately approved this in early 2021, this would be how the future land use map would change, having a similar land use than what is directly adjacent to the west. Next slide, please. I did take some photos around the site. Of course, this is a repeat of an aerial to show you the general land use pattern. If I got the next slide. And you've seen this slide once before, but this shows you the proposed use, which is the new location for the South Florida Baptist Hospital. I won't get into any details on this, as I know the applicant has a presentation of their own, which will explain this more fully. If I could have the next slide. This is looking northeast at the intersection of Park Road and Sam Allen Road. Actually, this was taken a couple months ago. Actually, I was up there just yesterday, and they're doing some road work and expanding that facility, particularly for East Sam Allen Road, to a 4-lane roadway. If I could have the next slide. And this shows you the plan amendment site looking south from East Sam Allen Road the affected lands of this plan amendment. If I could have the next slide. This shows you some of the roads that, some of the homes that are along East Alma Road to the north of the plan amendment site. Next slide. And though not directly adjacent, this shows you some of the homes along North Wilder Road looking south on that facility. Next slide. So I'll give you a little bit of idea what the entitlements that would be garnered from this approval of this plan amendment. Currently, it would allow 20 dwelling units. That would not increase all that significantly under the commercial designation, as it is predominantly looked at for non-residential uses, but it does increase to 64 dwelling units. But we know that is not the intent of the applicant. The true entitlements would be increased would be the non-residential portion, which will basically increase from around 30,000 in the county to over 300,000 in the commercial land use designation of the city of Plant City. Next slide. We did look at this plan amendment. We looked for comments from other agencies. We received none of particular significance. However, we look at the future land use element in particular. The goals, objectives, and policies of the ones I'm going to cite here in a moment are included in their entirety in your packet for your review. However, we did feel that this request was consistent with the following subject areas of that document, the Imagine 2040 Plant City Comprehensive Plan, including neighborhood conservation, community development, enhance the hometown charm. You have the next slide. Dealing with future growth and annexations, commercial development, growth management. Next slide. Provision of public facilities and economic growth. If I could have the next slide. We did speak with the Plant City Utilities Department, and they indicated too there's capacity both in wastewater and potable water to serve this facility. This is within the Northeast Plant City Area Master Plan, so it will require plan development rezoning, and as part of that rezoning, they will do an in-depth transportation analysis to see if any improvements are needed. As you can expect, a facility of this type will generate some traffic. As this is not proposing further residential development, there should be no issues concerning school capacity of the surrounding facilities. If I could have the next slide. I had this reviewed by the Planning Commission on September 14th. They did recommend its approval and consistency with the Imagine 2040 Plant City Comprehensive Plan to the City Commission on that date. Of course, we're here today to seek your similar recommendation. We have a tentative date identified for the transmittal hearing of October 26th. And as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, a projection adoption hearing is sometime in January 2021. And if I could have the last slide, please. With that, our Planning Commission staff recommends that PCCPA 2005 be found consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Imagine 2040 Plant City Comprehensive Plan, and to forward this recommendation to the Plant City Commission. That concludes my presentation, and I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Are there any questions by the board members?
Yes, this is Bonnie Carr. I have a question. Mark, I think I understand, but just technically, is the difference between a rural residential and suburban residential just the density, or is there more to that?
Predominantly, it is the density. In particular, we'll probably talk more about that in the next plan amendment that's coming up on your agenda. But
Okay,
yeah, but usually we consider rural residential like 1 unit per 5 acres or 1 unit per acre. Usually the least dense suburban density that we consider, which is in Plant City, which is 1 unit per, 4 units per acre. That's considered the suburban density.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Any other questions from board members? Okay. This is a public hearing. In the notice for this hearing, the public was advised to contact the city clerk no later than 3 p.m. on Tuesday, September 22nd, should anyone wish to speak. Madam City Clerk, did anyone contact your office to speak at this public hearing?
no requests were made to speak, but you do have applicants, I believe, to.
Excellent. You may proceed. Would you please again identify yourself and state your name and address for the record?
Hello again,
Hi.
Elise Batzel, Stearns Weaver Miller, 401 East Jackson Street, Suite 2100 in Tampa. Again, I'm joined by Karen Kerr and Scott Harding of South Florida Baptist. I will go through a couple of these quickly just to avoid duplication from Mark's presentation. Mark already identified the property information. The request is to establish a land use classification of commercial. Obviously, we previously have been before you for the annexation, but we will also be processing a plan development rezoning application, which will be coming from before this board at a later date. As you saw, the current future land use map shows the property outlined in blue. And the proposed expansion of the commercial would include the property in blue and would expand that slightly to the east. This is an interesting slide because I think that it really does show the compatibility and consistency of the request with that established commercial corridor there along Park Road. This is the entire 50 acres of the project. Obviously, the comprehensive plan amendment is only for the area outside of that existing commercial corridor. Again, the larger project in the subject area. But one thing that I think is interesting about the conceptual site plan, and I think it's important not just for the comprehensive plan and the compatibility, but also for the future applications that you're going to hear, are the enhanced setbacks and massing that we have really put a lot of thought into with this project. We understand that there are areas around that are undeveloped. And so when Scott and his team were designing the site, it was really important to us that the scale and the massing and the setbacks reflected the nature of the surrounding properties, not just the commercial, but some of the underdeveloped property and residential property surrounding this area.
So what is the deep green area to the on the north side?
Yeah, so the deep green are existing wetlands that will be preserved.
Those are wetlands. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
The blue, of course, is stormwater retention. And this is a conceptual site plan at this point, but we're fairly far along. So ultimately, what comes before you in the plan development will be very consistent with what you see here today.
May I ask you a question, ma'am?
Yes, of course.
If you can go back to that map, the property would be back to the west. What's the purpose of owning the property across the street for the hospital that's on the east side? Is that some
Contractually, the owner owned that property as well, so it was a package deal.
So there will be nothing at this time built there, not even like a doctor's office or anything. It's just going to be.
You mean across
Yes, ma'am.
the street? Yes, just stormwater retention. That's correct. Scott, stormwater retention at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me if it would be something like a doctor's office in the future.
And because the existing wetlands, of course, flow to the northwest, it makes sense to have stormwater retention in that area as well.
So that property came with it basically then. Okay, thank you so much.
Of course. Again, the rendering. And what's interesting about this, and I think probably more appropriate to speak to with a comprehensive plan amendment, and again with the PD development application, is the large areas that you're going to see before you actually get to building on the site. Because there's 50 acres, there's plenty of area for buffering, there's plenty of area for future expansion for green space, and we were very thoughtful in that. With respect to justification for the comp plan, just for the record, there is a nearby interchange between I-4 and Park Road. This is considered a commercial activity center. Park Road Commercial Activity Center affords the greatest potential for meeting the future general and highway commercial needs of the northeastern Hillsborough County. That's from your comprehensive plan. The Northeast Quadrant Vision Map considers the existing overall project area as commercial and the subject area, meaning the area to be changed from into commercial as residential 6 today. The project has access to Sam Allen Road, which is planned for a 4-lane expansion. And it has access to Park Road and is less than a third of a mile from the I-4 interchange. As you've heard, the staff and the Planning Commission have found this consistent, and we would ask for your recommendation of approval today as well. Of course, we're available to answer any questions that you have. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions?
Yes, sir.
Bonnie, any questions?
No, no questions.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here, anyone else physically in attendance that would like to speak at this public hearing? Okay, there being no further speakers, the hearing is closed. Board members, what's your thoughts on the subject? Do you want any discussion? Yeah. Is there any discussion? No? Okay. What's the pleasure of the board? Yep.
Comprehensive plan.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion by Doug Riggers. Is there a second?
Second that.
We
I'll
have a
second
second by
that.
Jason Jones. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion? Okay. We'll call for the roll. Seeing no discussion. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Art Wood,
Yes.
Jeremy Burris.
Yes.
Bonnie Carr,
Yes.
Doug Driggers,
Yes.
Nick Thurston,
Yes.
Jason Jones.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 6-0. Okay, thank you. The next case is PC/CPA 20-06, Future Land Use Map Amendment. This is a public hearing. We have Mark Hudson again to present this item on behalf of the Planning Commission. Mr. Hudson, please state your name and address for the record. You may proceed at any time.
Thank you, Chairman. Mark Hudson, Planning Commission staff, 601 East Kennedy Boulevard, County Center, 18th floor. This is the second of two plan amendments that the Planning Commission is processing this cycle on behalf of the City of Plant City. As already indicated by the chairman, it's PCCPA 20-06. If I could have the next slide. As opposed to the last plan amendment, this one is located on the southern side of Plant City, in particular north of Sparkman Road, west of Jap Tucker Road, south of Jim Johnson Road, and east of the CSX railroad tracks. This is a plan amendment associated with an annexation that you heard earlier in your meeting. If I could have the next slide. This shows you again the area surrounded with the lavender dashed line. You can kind of see from the aerial that currently it was in agricultural use. This has a rural residential land use pattern around it, predominantly residential one in unincorporated Hillsborough County. It makes this connection with the City of Plant City on the west side, next to the CSX railroad tracks. And I'll show you that a little bit more in detail on some future graphics. If I could have the next slide. So by way of background, this, as opposed to the last one, is also privately initiated. It's composed of 3 parcels, 28.76 acres. Currently has a Hillsborough County Residential 1 land use plan category, which I would consider a rural residential development pattern. In response to Ms. Carr's question earlier on the last plan amendment, and the request is residential 4 in Plant City, and that's a suburban plan category. However, I will note that that is the lowest, least intense, least dense plan category that is available within a municipality. The municipality doesn't typically develop property on a rural scale. They develop property on either an urban or suburban scale. If I could have the next slide. Shows you the adopted future land use map as it stands today. You can see in Plant City, there's an industrial park on the side of the CSX railroad tracks. One of the users in that is actually the Plant City Police Department. Also, there's an area that is designated as recreation open space. That is I believe, a closed and monitored landfill. And of course, you can see to the north, east, and west. No, excuse me, north, east, and south of this plan amendment site is the Hillsborough County Residential 1 plan category in that light green color. The current municipal boundaries are shown with the blue dashed line. If I could have the next slide. And if this was approved by the City Commission in early 2021, it would change it to this darker yellow color signifying Plant City Residential 4. I will note if you look up in the very north east portion of this slide, you can see that there has been some other annexations in this general area that requested the same plan category that were thus approved. However, to date, they have not been developed with suburban scale residential neighborhoods. If I could have the next slide. Again, as like the last plan amendment, I have some slides to show you the general development pattern of the area. This is an aerial of the site showing the agricultural uses that are today and the surrounding single family homes, predominantly on 1 acre or greater lot size. If I could have the next slide. And this is looking at the site west from Jack Tucker Road at the site. And this is the roadway that the site would garner its access from. Next slide. And this is looking north from the site along Jack Tucker Road. You can see on the eastern portion of the site some of the single family homes that currently reside there. Next slide. So what are the potential impacts? Today in the county, they could develop 28 single family homes on well and septic. Within the city of Plant City, that potential would increase to 115 dwelling units and will require water and wastewater lines to be run and to be served by that. If I can have the next slide. Our staff did review this per the Imagine 2040 Plant City Comprehensive Plan. In particular, the goals, objectives, and policies that I note here on my slides are included in their entirety for your packet for your review. However, in general, we feel that it is consistent with neighborhood conservation, future growth annexations, growth management, the provision of public facilities. Next slide, please. Also, this neighborhood approved and built will have to go through the school concurrency process with the Hillsborough County School District to ensure that there are student stations for the projected number of students that would be generated. There will be transportation analysis required of this site in the future, which will need to be coordinated with Hillsborough County. I will say there has been some neighbors who have particularly expressed concern about the traffic this would generate, and that would be analyzed more fully at that zoning stage versus the cursory review that we do at the land use stage. And I already noted that the utilities department feels that there is adequate capacity to serve this with water and wastewater services. If I could have the next slide. We did present this to the Planning Commission at a public hearing on September 14th. They did find it consistent with Imagine 2040 Plant City Comprehensive Plan. We're asking for your recommendation and position on this today as well, so that can be transmitted ultimately to the City Commission. The City Commission's projected transmittal date that has tentatively been set for October 26, and we have a projected adoption hearing in January 2021. If I could have the next slide. Again, as with the last, Planning Commission staff recommends that PCCPA 2006 be found consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Imagine 2040 Plant City Comprehensive Plan, and forward this recommendation to the Plant City Commission. Chairman, that concludes my presentation, and stand for any questions, and I do believe the applicant is also present.
Thank you. Just so you all understand, this is a hearing about land use. What additional hearings would be required before there could even be a home built on the property? Yeah.
I think some of the planning staff, Plant City probably could give you all the steps. Of course, there is the zoning of the property that will be required, but also platting the property. So there'll be a couple of more opportunities that will bring this before the planning board and offer opportunities for public comment. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to lay that groundwork. You know, so this is just a land use designation. Correct. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions to make to Mr. Hudson or comments?
This is Bonnie Carr. I have a question, and I'm not 100% sure of the timing, but I know there's a lot of discussion about the timing for school concurrency through this process. And, you know, right now we're voting on land use and then eventually the zoning. the school concurrency issues, I guess, that are coming up in areas like, South Hillsborough. Mark, can you speak to how the planning process flows? Why we in Plant City should not be concerned about that?
Well, I think it's always something that we should be aware of. We are not in the same situation today as, unfortunately, South Hillsborough County is. And to avoid those same issues, the school district is actually, as we speak, looking at a study or actually in conducting a study to determine what additional school facilities will be needed to provide for Plant City's expected growth. In particular, they're looking at new school locations to the northeast of Plant City, which we know where the majority of their growth will be. In the meantime, before that study is complete and before those school sites have been identified, there is a school concurrency process in place that any applicant that generates additional residential units must go through. And if the school capacity is not there, they have to consult with the school district and offer some remedy to be sure that those students are served before they can actually ultimately go and construct those new homes. I will say there, in addition to that, there's impact fees that each home will be required to pay. And those impact fees, again, go to developing additional student stations within the area that impacts generated by whatever neighborhood is being built. The school district has been very proactive in this regard, and because of the lessons learned in South County, the hope is that we will not run into those similar delays that they had. And in particular, that's why they've embarked on this study in advance to ensure that that capacity is maintained. So, we will continue to coordinate that with them, and of course, advise anytime there's an application like this, we get them into contact with the school district and their appropriate staff.
Okay, thank you, Bonnie. Any other questions, Mr. Hudson? Is there a representative of the applicant present? Okay, would you please identify yourself, name and address?
Yes, Sarah Case, address 6700 South Florida Avenue, Suite 4 in Lakeland.
Thank you.
Again, I'm representing the property owners. Thank you, Mark, for your presentation. Very thorough, and we appreciate the support. I did want to mention, as far as school concurrency, our development team reached out to Hillsborough County School Board this week, as a matter of fact. And so we have initiated that process. Not for binding yet because of the other steps that we have to go through. And speaking of that process, our plan is to apply for zoning later towards the end of this year to have a companion that the process will be finished around the same time, which would be in January of 2021 for zoning. Again, we are doing a single family subdivision. Maximum density, as Mark mentioned in his report, would be 115 units, but our conceptual plans at this point are showing a yield of 90. But again, we'll have to address all the impact issues as far as concurrency with traffic and water and wastewater generation, that type of thing. So I'll send for any questions that you may have, but we would appreciate your vote of support. Thank you.
I got one question. Any idea what type of home it may be? Would it be a square foot pattern, or any idea in terms of what pricing these homes would be yet? Have we all got that far yet?
No, but we're working with a locally owned home builder company out of Lakeland. Okay. And they have several different models, but I can't speak to.
Yes, ma'am. I understand. Okay. I understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board?
One more question, Art.
Yes.
Just reviewing the packet, there does seem to be some concern over traffic. I'm sure we'll hear more about that. But just you mentioned that. What is the timing and the depth that would go into looking at the traffic and the potential impact of the neighborhood?
So our intent is to apply for straight zoning, and it would run concurrent with this comp plan amendment application, and hopefully get approval for both at the end of January 2021. Then we would have to get all of our levels of approval with the various government agencies, SwiftMud, obviously the county, the city, for engineering. So I don't think that we would, I think it'd be safe to say middle of 2022 because of plating and the infrastructure that has to go in place first. But so probably middle of 2022, the first home will be built.
Yeah. That seems so far away.
We just need to get through 2020.
I'm still dealing with last year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. Okay. This is a public hearing, and the notice of this hearing, the public was advised they could contact the city clerk no later than 3 p.m. on Tuesday, the 22nd, should anyone wish to speak. Madam Clerk, did anyone contact your office to speak at this public hearing?
No request from me.
No? Okay. No requests were received.
Correct.
Okay.
No, we just open to the public.
Is there anyone else physically in attendance that would like to speak at this hearing? You'll have 3 minutes. Sir, you're looking down, but I want to make sure. I thought item D was of interest. Okay, thank you. There are no further speakers. The hearing is closed. Are there board members that would like to discuss this matter? No? Then what's the pleasure of the board?
I think hearing no really, more so in the infancy of the stages, I think we should motion to approve it. It meets our comprehensive plan for 2040, the PCCPA 2006. Motion to approve.
Okay, so we have a motion by Jeremy and a second by Doug Driggers. Any discussion of the motion? No? Madam Clerk, please call for the vote.
Art Wood,
Yes.
Jeremy Burris,
Yes.
Bonnie Carr,
Yes.
Doug Driggers,
Yes.
Nick Thurston,
Yes.
Jason Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The tally is 6-0. All right, next section is a little bit of a different character, so we'll have a swearing in of staff and speakers. If you are a staff or a speaker wishing to speak on this item 6A, 6B on the agenda, please stand and be sworn in. Madam City Clerk?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Thank you. Next order of business is quasi-judicial hearings. The first case is PB 2020-12, Falcon Cove preliminary plat. City staff, you may proceed. Please state your name, address, and that you've been sworn in.
Good morning. My name is Robin Baker, Senior Planner with Planning and Zoning Division, located at 302 West Reynolds Street, and I've been sworn in. The request before you this morning is PB 2020-12, Falcon Cove preliminary plat. The request is for a preliminary plat to establish a 56-lot single-family subdivision. The site is located at 2718 Jim Johnson Road and is located within the R1A single-family dwelling district. It's also located within the residential for future land use category and has a proposed density of 2.77 units per acre. This is a copy of the preliminary plat showing access off of, it's just a sole access off of Jim Johnson Road. So there was a plat previously approved on this property back in 2008, also called Falcon Cove. And as part of that preliminary plat, there were several waivers that were approved. They were granted a waiver to reclaim water lines, the requirement for sidewalks. They were granted a waiver to required access to public streets. And they were also granted a waiver to required cross access to adjacent properties. I think it's important to point out that a few of those waivers are very specific to the fact that that project at that time was proposed to be private roads. It was proposed to be gated. So those particular requirements for sidewalks internal to the project were waived because it's private roads. And the waiver in the resolution is specific to them not having to provide sidewalks along Jim Johnson Road, okay? Required access to public streets, again, it was a private road, private gated subdivision, so that was not necessary. And then the required cross access was also very specific to the private development. As of right now, they have changed that proposal, and this will be public roads. It will not be a gated community. So there are some of those waivers that will not apply to the current request, and changes to the plat may be required by the time we get to the final plat to address those issues. Staff reviewed the preliminary plat for Chapter 94 subdivision regulations, Chapter 102 of the zoning ordinance, the Imagine 24 Plan City Comprehensive Plan, and staff recommends the planning board find the preliminary plat adopting code consistent with the technical requirements noted above and recommends approval. I'm here if you have any questions.
So that's for those waivers. They're not automatically extended if we do this approval today.
Well, the waiver to reclaim lines is yes, that one is a waiver they won't have to adhere to. But the other ones, the way that the resolution is worded, they're very specific to the fact that the project was proposed to be private.
Right.
So now that it's not private, it's going to have to be a discussion as we move forward through the construction plan process as to whether or not they're going to have to provide those things. They will not have to provide sidewalks along Jim Johnson Road because that is specific wording in the resolution. But as far as the cross access and the sidewalks internal to the site, it's definitely going to have to be a discussion that continues as we move through the construction plan process.
Okay, so nothing we do today commits us to any of those waivers, either extending them or not extending them or discussing them or anything.
No, sir. Just wanted to make you aware of it.
That's what I wanted to be sure about. Okay. Does the board have any questions for Ms. Baker? Is there a representative of the applicant present? Mr. Boggs, please state your name and address, and you've been sworn in. You may proceed at your convenience.
Steve Boggs, 607 South Alexander Street, Plant City, Florida. I have been sworn in, and I'm just here to answer any questions. I agree with what they said.
Oh, okay. That's easy. Thank you, Steve. Any questions? I'll be happy to.
Mr. Boggs, one question, that they just don't want to have a gate in the community anymore, that was, they're going to be gated now that
It's a different developer.
Okay.
And so they want to go to the public roads, that way the maintenance of the roadways is in the.
that would the HOA have to take care of, I guess.
Okay.
Understood.
Any other questions? Again, this is a preliminary plat. Okay. Okay. This is a public. I'm sorry, Bonnie, were you speaking up?
Yeah, this is Danny Coton. I was appearing on behalf of one of the adjacent property owners. I just wasn't sure what time or.
Stand by. I'll be right with you. This is a public hearing. In the notice for this hearing, the public was advised that they could contact the city clerk no later than 3 p.m. on Tuesday, 22nd, should anyone wish to speak. Madam Clerk, did anyone contact your office to speak virtually at this hearing?
Yes, we have Attorney Coton on the line that was interested in speaking.
Okay. Mr. Coton, are you still on the line?
I am.
Yes, please state your name and address for the record, and you may proceed. You have 3 minutes. You may proceed at your convenience.
Okay. My name is Daniel Coton. I'm Frankel Redmond Law Firm. Address is 121 North Collins Street, Plant City, Florida 33563. I'm appearing on behalf of the North property owner, this is Johnson Excavating, and Don Johnson, the owner. Wanted to just point out, we're trying to look at this forward, in a forward perspective. The property to the north that's owned by Johnson is landlocked. So we had reached out to the to the engineers last week and tried to reach out to the owner to see if how we would if there was some way to resolve this issue with the property to the north being landlocked by this development. The property to the north is approximately 12 acres, and there is no other access that we can find other than working something out with this project. So we wanted to just bring that to the attention of the board, that we're this is going to move, where we have a landlocked piece of property to the north of this.
I can see that.
Okay, thank you. Does the board have any questions for Mr. Coton?
I do.
Jeremy Burris is recognized.
Hey, Mr. Coton, this is Jeremy Burris. Did you or the landowner have any suggestions on how we can incorporate not having that property landlocked through that development? Is there a particular, I'm looking at this property now and I see on the north, you're talking about that triangle piece of property that must be landlocked. Is there anything that you could suggest or that we can communicate now to help that homeowner have access in and out of that property? Is there something you're thinking about?
Well, we haven't gotten specifics. We had reached out to the engineers, last week and just put them on notice that this was an issue, and we were hoping to make some communication with the developer, last week or this week, and we haven't heard back. So I think Mr. Johnson has got a few proposals that he'd like to communicate with the developer about. We just haven't been able to get a dialogue going just yet.
Yes, sir. Okay.
But I think there are a few options. Just I was hoping that we would be able to have something somewhat worked out, or at least something some things on the table before this hearing. But like I said, we weren't able to to reach the developer over the last week.
Hopefully with this hearing now, the developer will hear your concern and hopefully be able to return your phone call and reach out to you.
Yeah. And like I said, I think we're just trying to bring it to the planning board's attention, and hopefully we can, like I said, we have a few alternatives that we think might be viable, but we don't have anything concrete right now.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Coton. Any other questions from the board?
Well, this is Bonnie Carr. I'm a little confused by this because I guess my understanding is that it's landlocked, and I'd like to hear from staff or, regarding this. I'm not sure how we move forward without having some assessment of that.
Well, I think it just has to be resolved. You want to address that, Mr. Box? Yeah. Yeah.
Let me see.
It's page 2 of 5.
I think I know what you're going to say, but I'd rather have you say it.
Do we have arrow is there arrow on the slide? Is there an arrow on the slide?
So where the property.
Okay, hang on just a minute, get it up. Second slide.
Yes, ma'am. That one right there. Next one. Back. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
If we could.
Can you see this, Bonnie, on your screen now?
Yes.
Mr. Box is going to speak.
Mr. Coton did contact me last week, and I did contact the client, and he is aware of this. And I gave him Mr. Coton's phone numbers, and then vice versa, I gave Mr. Coton the client's number. So it's an issue that will be worked out. My understanding, this property was part of the Cornet Mine sale when they went and funked on that, and Johnson Excavation bought that property. We have preliminarily looked at what we can possibly do as far as making access. That has not been completed as of yet. And I think we could make some accommodations. A lot of it depends on how it's going to affect our site. Also, if you look to the west point of that property, you'll see I can't tell you the name of the road. There's a little roadway that runs north-south just west of the agricultural land there. Yep. That is a Hillsborough County access road. That would be a potential connection point. You'd have to cross the ag farm there also. Either way, there's some issues. We have a drainage ditch easement that's on our northern property that has to be crossed. I'm sure that there's some coordination that can go on between both property owners to make that happen, or can cross over by the ag. That will be accomplished during the construction plan submittal process. And so, it's not, we're still in the preliminary at this point.
Yes, sir.
Once that gets to that point, we'll make those accommodations.
Okay, so in the next version of this plat, then we'll see an accommodation for that landowner.
Yeah, I'm sure that something's gonna be forced one way or the other, for him to get access. There's multiple ways for him to gain access.
Okay.
Because if you look around there, there's, I think about 1, 2, 3, about 4 or 5 properties for an access to be made.
Right.
Okay, and so, I know that we, by making it public, have opened up the door for a cross-access easement, or cross-access, because it's a public road. And so we will, look into that and see what we can come up with.
Okay. So we can approve the preliminary plat at this point and still leave that issue as something that has
It's
to be
still gonna be,
resolved.
still gonna be on plan engineering and zoning during that next process.
Okay.
So my understanding that from Mr. Boggs is that we're going to try to, engage in some communication to see if we can, find a resolution.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what I sense you're saying.
Okay. All right. I had a little hard time hearing.
Okay.
Okay. I think that's what I'm trying to do is to get a just some communication to see if we can get this landlock issue resolved.
I understand. Thank you, Mr. Coton. Thank you, Mr. Boggs. Is there any other questions for these folks?
I just want to make sure we're completely accurate. If we vote yes to move this forward, we're definitely leaving the door open for Mr. Coton, his client, to continue.
Yeah, we've identified that as something that has to be resolved.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else physically in attendance that would like to speak at this hearing? Anyone else? Okay, there'll be no further speakers. The hearing is closed. Board members, would you like to discuss the matter? Any discussion from the board? Okay, then what's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve Falcon Cove preliminary plat PB 2020-12.
Okay, thank you. That was Jason Jones making the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second by Jeremy Burris. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing no discussion, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Arthur Wood,
Yes.
Jeremy Burris,
Yes.
Bonnie Carr,
Yes.
Doug Driggers,
Yes.
Nick Thurston,
Yes.
Jason Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the tally is 6-0. Thank you all very much. Okay.
You.
The next order of business is item PB 2020-10, the REA Plan Development Modification. This got an interesting twist on it. I know the board members got an email yesterday, maybe. The staff has requested a continuance of this application in order to address some changes needed on the site plan. The applicant has requested a continuance date of October 14th. That's a date the board was shown as a possible second meeting date for the month. And I want to make clear what our attorney advised us. We are actually opening this item with this discussion we're having now. So we're seeking so it's open, and there's going to be a continuance to some future date. And the date they've requested is October 14th, Does the board want any discussion on this? You see any discussion at this point? Yeah. I specifically want to discuss October 14th with you all. So, but is there a representative of the applicant present?
Yes.
I think we identified a Mr. Yes, sir. Would you like to come forward? Was this gentleman sworn in? I know he came in after.
That's okay. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, now for the record, please state your name and address and that you've been sworn in.
Brian Mahalik with D.R. Horton. Address is 12602 Telecom Drive, Tampa, Florida, and I have been sworn.
Okay. What was the last name again, sir?
Mahalik.
Mahalik. Okay, thank you.
So we are granting the staff to continue to work through these issues on the site plan before we come to the board, but we are requesting October 14th. Application's been submitted for a while. To not avoid a further delay in the schedule, hoping that you guys will be accommodating to that date.
Okay, and you see you're confident you have whatever you need to have developed by that date? And there's sufficient notice period as well, because does a revised notice have to go out? I'm getting a yes.
Yes, the notices would have to go out by the 29th of this month.
Okay, so there's plenty of time for everything.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Does the board have any questions of the gentleman? Mr. Mahalik? Yeah.
So by us continuing today to a date certain, if you choose that date, then we wouldn't have to renotice. Because you're choosing a date certain today on the record, we wouldn't have to send out notice.
Would not have to. Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Madam Clerk, did anyone contact you to speak virtually?
Yeah, I had received a request from Lanai Luttrell, but I'm not seeing her on the line, so I'm not. So,
She's not on the line.
No, she's not on the line, so I believe I can ask, Ms. Luttrell, are you on the line? No, and she's the only one who requested to speak.
Okay, is there anyone else physically in attendance that would like to speak at this public hearing?
Raise your hand, right.
Yes, sir. Well, we'll get around to both of you. Yeah. You'll have 3 minutes. Please state your name, address, and that you've been sworn in before this proceeding.
Stuart Hartman, 4105 East of Knights Griffin Road. And I have been sworn in.
Thank you, sir.
And just as a quick aside, I'll make the 3 I'm going to try, but a little background on me because nobody knows who I am. I should have gone to Plant City High School, but my dad said, you're going to Kathleen because it's too far to walk. Graduated from West Point, did 30 years in the Army, active in reserve, been downrange. I've been a city engineer, a public works director, and a county planning commissioner. All the past, I'm still 35.
Wow.
Yeah, all that time. Went to a meeting that these guys had last week, was it? And a couple observations. A lot of people were upset about the representation at the meeting, not people who were noticed. This is a huge tract, and the representation of it is 250 feet, 300 feet, and it affects a lot more people, a lot more than just that simple little limitation. So let's just say it's 260 people. For easy math, 2,600 homes, right now all 260 people are 100%. When it builds out, we'll be 10%. We're a minority. The biggest issue there at the meeting was drainage. The biggest issue. Water Management District was there, and these guys talked about, and their engineer was there as well. They're going to do the engineering stuff, okay, I get that. However, the district did acknowledge that once things are developed, as it's common practice, residences change, they add driveways, they add swimming pools. What will happen on a site this size is, let's just say somebody adds an extra driveway or a little bit of sidewalk or swimming pool. On 2,600 homes, it's going to equate to about 15 acres of additional impervious that goes downhill, goes to the edge of the creek. We have a problem with that. So there needs to be some consideration, maybe for that. It's also acknowledged that the developer has already submitted to the Corps of Engineers, which is pending, hopefully received, an approval and conceptual plan to the Water Management District, which is already there. The problem I have with that is those are the 2 hardest permits to get on the continuum of time for development. Once you get those, the rest of the stuff in the city is easy. Water, sewer, all that's easy. We have 0 input. That forms the basis for this whole development. No people around the area have any input on what that looks like. So I don't think they're going to change anything, because if they do, that changes their timeline with hitting this market window. A couple things on the comp plan. Element goal, number 1. Due to its size, does this preserve and protect the character of the area?
You don't have much time left.
I know, it's a complete change of character. I get that. 2.6, governing policies, preserving and enhancing hometown charm, doesn't do that. Bottom line, no good to the end. I'm glad to hear there's a continuance. I'd like to hold this and make that continuance as a further continuance. It needs a more complete review of the comp plan. Let's address all those particular items like drainage, like environmental stuff. Why is the site limited to strictly environmental review on the site? And there's an off-site impact. The meetings held so far purported to give us information and ask for input, zero input. Lastly, there needs to be better coordination for the comp plan with local agencies. Full County, huge development going over there, EPC, the continuum is there. So I'm good with it. Okay. They need to do better background check. Let's put it on hold.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your expertise. One sec, come forward, sir. We want time to sanitize the station. Okay, would you please identify yourself, give us your name and address, and state for the record that you've been sworn in.
Yes, my name is Byron Nelson. I live at 3235 East Williams Road, and I have been sworn in.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
I'm at the far east end of Williams Road. My property is totally bounded on the east side, most of my west side, but proposed project. Water is a big problem, as the previous gentleman stated. A lot of people are really concerned about that. I've got pictures in my phone. I could show you the part of the project they're going to build on under a couple of feet of water right now where houses will be. Anyway, I moved here in 1994 to be in a rural area. And when I built my house, I had to have 5 acres to build it. Matter of fact, the county came up and decided, when they calculated, I had 4.997. And they said, well, wow, that doesn't make it. And then we pointed out the decimal points and they said, okay, it does. So I built a house. Now they're proposing 15 units per 5 acres, which is 3 per acre as it comes out. But I've got a picture of the 15 houses on my house, on my lot, and it's just incomprehensible to me something like that be in the county. You had a previous speaker, I think it was Mark Hudson. He spoke that the county rural density is 1 house per 5 acres. Well, and urban density is 4 houses per acre. I guess the least dense the city has is 4 houses per acre. However, that's not really city out there. It's within the city limits now because the city is expanding out through the rural areas. So that really should be 5 acres or something closer to that, somewhere in between. I was thinking about, 60-foot wide lots out there. So, 60 feet. And I was thinking, well, my house won't even fit. My house is 75 feet wide. The guy across the street is 65 feet wide. The one next door is 90 feet wide. I measured them all in Google Earth last night. Just going down the road, 75, 85, 100, 100, 70, 70, 70. Another house in the neighborhood, we can get on a lot. That's, I don't say low-income housing, but entry-level housing for people who are just starting out. It's inconsistent out there. I realize landowners have a right to sell their land, buyers have a right to build houses, but this is not in town. This is in a rural area, and they should have 3 to 5 acres per lot, 5, something like that. We may be well past that point on this, but the point is, you should need to know what people feel like. Nobody is happy about this going in. City's obligation to require what's consistent with a rural area, and this is not consistent. It's in summary, anything that the city can do to minimize the water problems out there, because a lot of people already have water problems, and looking at elevations, as they build some of this up to get that water off the property now, unless they take it somewhere else, it's going to go onto our neighbors' properties, many of whom have water up in their yards now, and you can see it for hundreds of feet out.
You're about out of time, sir.
All right. We don't feel us talking, I think, but anyway, to reduce density or to make sure they do control the water would be sincerely appreciated by everybody else.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this? Okay, Robin, I got a question maybe you best answer. What stage of this, what's going to be a multi-stage process, are we at? I think if I read it right, this is a conception, we're at the point of just a conceptual change of moving from a traditional neighborhood development, I guess, TND, to a, what?
Just
I don't know what you call it now. Yeah.
Right, I've struggled with the same thing.
Yeah, okay.
It's basically just going to go to our regular plan development pattern, and then so the development will be committed to what is on the site plan at that time.
Okay.
Under the TND,
Yeah.
we have another section with a lot of regulations that they would have had to follow. In this scenario, they would be held by the site plan.
But, so our decision at this point is relatively narrow. It's just a question of, are we allowing them to move from a traditional neighborhood development to whatever the current rules allow? Yeah.
Correct.
We're not approving what those rules are or anything like that. I mean, you know, we're not approving a plat or anything like that. We're just, I saw the word conceptual. This is just a conceptual change.
The word conceptual is just the way it's worded in our code.
Yeah.
But you're correct. This is a technical change. They're not increasing their request as far as what they're approved for density or intensity. That remains the same.
Yeah.
It's just the type of development. They're currently
Correct. That's what I'm looking
for a traditional neighborhood development.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we need to further iron out, is because there are some matrix trade-offs that are allowed within the TND that would say, okay, we're going to do 2,600 units, and then they get to decide later how many of those units they're going to do. But by changing to this newer version of it, we have to put that in stone to know exactly how many of each unit you're doing, so that when we look at the lot size and that kind of thing, so we know what we're looking at. And we wanted to make sure that site plan was final and everything was shown, so that when you see it, that's it. We're not approving, say, approval with these changes. I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want the site plan that you see to be the site plan you're approving.
And we're not approving any drainage issues with this conceptual change. I mean, we're not approving any, the roads don't have to be widened or anything else like that. This is just a change in how and the type of development that they're going to have on the property.
There are specific transportation improvements that were, required with the previous that will carry to this. But you're right.
Yeah.
Those types of things will be handled at a later stage in construction plan process, when those types of plans are actually, we can see that information, and the professionals in the building would look at drainage and make sure they check all the boxes.
Okay. Thank you. I did that just so we all could understand the scope of what we're dealing with at this moment.
I got another question for Robin. Sorry, thank you. So Art was asking about, kind of what we're approving. So we're approving that moving from the TND standards to this other model where it's specific to the site plan.
Right.
So we're making that decision. At what point are we approving the site plan, or does that come before this board? Or is that's subsequent? Okay.
Well, this is a site plan that you're approving.
Okay.
You're going to see the general layout of the development pods, where things are going to be located, that kind of thing. As far as plats are concerned, those come later.
Okay.
You'll see more detail of the actual lot layout, the accesses, the road layouts when we get to that point.
No, I understand. We're talking about once we're in front of this on October 14th. There you go.
Right.
Yeah. No, I'm saying it because we had public speak on it, and I want to put everything in proper perspective.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you, Robin.
I've got a question. Yes, sir. Mr. Driggers?
So in continuing this, there's not going to be any additional public notice the next time it comes up.
Technically, it's not required, but if you would like us to notice, we can send the notice out again. We have time. Technically, it has to be noticed 10 days prior to the hearing. So if this board would like us to do the notice, we can. But technically, you don't have to.
I think that'd be a good idea because, it's already been mentioned that, there's folks out there that don't feel like adequate notice was given so far in the project already. So yeah, I think that'd be a good idea.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there signage out there too?
There is, but it's a large property.
Yeah. So my question is since it's so large, another idea, it covers Knights Griffin Road, Charlie Taylor Road, and Midway Road. I can't recall when I drive out there even seeing a sign.
Okay.
Is there an opportunity that the city can put a sign on Knights Griffin Road, maybe two of them, maybe at least one on Charlie Taylor, and at least one or two on Midway Road, so you can definitely see it?
I currently have 2 signs on Knights Griffin.
Okay.
2 on Charlie Taylor. I have 1 on Midway. I could do a second one on Midway, but yeah, I can change those out.
sometimes that's what kind of triggers the thought process.
Yeah,
So much.
especially for those outside of that
Yes, ma'am.
250 feet that just drive by that may want to come and speak.
How big of a sign is it?
Their normal yard signs.
Yeah, see, that's the challenge is when you're going 55, 65 mile an hour down Knights Griffin Road, you should, and you got a sign that's big, you're not gonna see it. So like my thought process is development that big, I'm wondering why we don't have like a 4x4 foot sign. You know, something big, hey, something fixing here.
Yeah, I agree with Jeremy. I drive up and down Knights Griffin often. I live up and quite frankly, I've never seen the sign. So I'm not sure where. They must be really small. I also agree that we need notice because the meeting is off of our regular cycle. So by having it on the 14th instead of later in the month, we definitely need to notice.
So is it sufficient that we're asking staff, we don't need a motion to have another notification? So you all satisfied?
Yes, ma'am.
We'll do that.
Thank you, Robin.
But how do we, is there any sentiment on the board to deal with something with the signage? More of the same is what looks like it's feasible, more of the same. But you're thinking,
I'm thinking a larger sign, Art. I'm telling you, when you're going down Charlie Taylor Road or Midway Road and Knights Griffin Road, you're moving.
Right.
And the problem is too, if the grass grows or weeds block it, or there's cows out there. I mean, a cow can be in front of that sign, you're not going to see it.
Well, I placed, in this particular
It
instance,
may be on the other side of the fence.
because I refuse to go through a ditch. In this particular instance, we are close to the road.
Okay.
But what I could do is maybe turn them sideways and fill out both sides of the sign. So that way they're kind of easier to see as they're driving by. We could try
Yes, ma'am.
that. As
That'd
far
be
as
nice.
ordering a new larger sign, I don't think I have enough time to do that.
Okay.
But we could talk about it in the future.
We're
Next
gonna
month,
talk
we'll
about
talk
that in
about
another meeting anyways, yeah.
but you can't do more of the same signs. Okay, and change the angle that they're viewed to
Maybe try to make them a little more visible.
a little more visible.
Thank you.
So is that enough on those issues? Okay. Let's, anything else, Bonnie?
Just a, I guess, very general question. We've decided to add or use our second meeting date. Was there a strong concern about continuing this to the regular meeting date? Given
I was going to bring that up for discussion at this point, but are we okay with the signs and the notification issues?
Yes, sir.
So let's talk about the meeting.
Yes.
This is a special date. We had discussed the feasibility in some email exchanges earlier. We were concerned that this agenda would have so much content that we would need a second meeting. So what we're doing is taking advantage of that opportunity. What's the feeling of the board about having a special meeting for this topic? Yeah.
I'm okay with it, as long as, again, we're making sure the community knows about it. I don't know how much of the community actually pays attention to that we meet on this date each. You know, if you took a poll of the community, how often do we meet each Wednesday of the month? They probably don't know, right? So I don't think that bothers me too much, but as long as we completely let people know, it'd be fine.
Do you want to say something, Mr. Buckman?
I just think there are a couple, Ken Buckman, there's a couple factors. One is you want to have sufficient time to resolve the remaining issues, and I'm understanding that there would be. The other would be to have a space that would be large enough to accommodate the anticipated crowd. That was the reason why I suggested a special meeting would be in place, because if you have a lot of other cases, you never know.
Yes, sir.
And what you don't want to do is have a situation where people have to leave the meeting because there's not enough room.
Or is it our intention to host a meeting here, or like HCC again?
I think this meeting would be here. I think we can do it. It's going to be a hybrid meeting like we're doing right now, so we can accommodate people virtually as well as live.
Great. Okay.
And that would be the only item of discussion at the special meeting, correct? Only item.
It would be.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I understand.
Go ahead, Bonnie, speak. Your turn.
No, I thank you for that input, Attorney Buckman. I understand.
So what's the pleasure of the board? Do we meet on that mid-month? Was it 13th or 14th?
14th.
Would we be able to meet virtually for those who couldn't make it? Will
Sure.
we have to be here?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd really like you to be here, but
Yeah, I'm just making, since it's gonna be so important, I want to make sure, for example, somebody be traveling for business, I think it'd be great if we can pull over and have a phone call with you guys.
right. Do we need a motion, any of that? Okay, so the motion, the recommendation is for a continuance. Here it is.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve a continuance of item PB 2020-10 to the October 14th special meeting.
Okay.
Second.
So you have a motion by Mr. Thurston and a second by Doug Drigger to continue. Yeah. Is it okay to close it with the motion? Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Board members, would you, we're going to do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
I think we have to do it. I think we have to do voice vote.
Dr. Wood,
Yes.
Jeremy Burns,
Yes.
Ron Clark,
Yes.
Douglas Driggers,
Yes.
Nick Thurston,
Yes.
Jason Jones.
Yes.
Favor.
So we had a 6-0 vote. Thank you very much. Is there any, is that sufficient for that item? That closes that item? Okay. Okay, thank you. Other business is attendance reports. Do we have one for this month? Yeah.
Everyone wants to hear?
Everyone, okay. No attendance report. Any other business to come? You know, we're still talking about the border, the distance thing, but we gave ourselves a couple of months on that, and you can see with what we've got, I'd rather keep pushing it out.
Yeah.
We'll deal with it on an exception basis like we did with.
But I think it's important now while we see what happened today, why it's important to communicate about it.
Yeah. Any other business to come before the group? Yeah. Okay, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Art. You do a great job.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, great job, Art.
Thank you. Have a good day.